The great hall of the alien palace was enormous, taller than any human building Marcus had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, glowing with colors that shifted like the northern lights. The walls were carved with strange, swirling patterns that told the stories of generations of alien rulers. Hundreds of soldiers had gathered not just from Marcus's world but from planets across the galaxy. They were all here for one reason. The princess would choose who would accompany her on a dangerous mission to protect the Alliance of Worlds. The soldiers stood tall, proud, and perfectly armed. Many were veterans of battles Marcus had only read about in history books. Their armor gleamed under the lights, their weapons polished to deadly perfection. Some whispered quietly to each other, comparing their skills, their ranks, their victories. Humans were few in number, and Marcus, the youngest human soldier, felt out of place. His uniform was simple, his sword still slightly bent from early practice fights, and he had never been in a real battle before. When the doors at the far end of the hall opened, a hush fell over the room. Princess Lyra appeared, floating slightly, above the ground, her presence commanding the attention of every living being in the hall. She wore robes that shimmered like liquid silver, and her eyes, bright, intelligent, and piercing, scanned the crowd slowly, deliberately. The soldiers straightened even more, each silently hoping that she would choose them. Marcus tried to hold his breath, but he felt like a tiny fish in a sea of sharks. Every part of him wanted to shrink into the floor, yet he couldn't move. Something inside him told him to stand his ground. The princess stopped her gaze at the far end of the hall and began to look from soldier to soldier. Some she barely glanced at. Others received a nod or a slight tilt of her head, acknowledging their skill or courage. But then, to everyone's shock, her eyes fell on Marcus. Not on the tallest, strongest, or most decorated soldiers. Not on the aliens with decades of combat experience. Just Marcus, the youngest human, barely out of training. She raised her hand slowly and pointed at him. Her finger was steady, her eyes calm, but full of certainty. The words she spoke were clear and deliberate. "He's mine." A deafening silence followed. Soldiers froze mid-breath. The murmurs stopped. Even the palace guards, who had seen countless battles and ceremonies, could not believe what they were seeing. Marcus's legs felt heavy, as if the ground had turned into thick mud beneath him. His heart pounded so loudly, he thought it might echo through the entire hall. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had trained to follow orders, to fight, to survive, but never to be chosen like this. Not by a princess, not in a room full of warriors stronger than him. Lyra's eyes met his directly. There was no hesitation, no doubt, only certainty. "You," she repeated, her voice firm, yet strangely gentle. "You will come with me." Marcus could barely believe it. Could it be a mistake? Surely the princess could not see anything special in him. He was small, inexperienced, and untested. Yet when he looked into her eyes, he felt a strange warmth, a quiet strength that seemed to whisper, "You are ready, even if you do not know it yet." The other humans stared at him with astonishment. He's so young," one muttered. The aliens around him scowled, their tall forms casting long shadows across the hall. Captain Zorak, a veteran alien warrior, stepped forward, his deep voice booming. "Princess, he's just a child. How can you trust him with this mission? He will fail, and you will regret this choice." Lyra did not flinch. She turned her gaze to Zorak, calm and unwavering. "You will not speak for me. I have chosen him. That is enough." Marcus's knees shook. His mind raced with doubt, fear, and an odd spark of pride. The princess had seen him in a way no one else had. She had chosen him not because of his strength, not because of his skill, but because she believed in him. That tiny belief felt heavier than any armor he had ever worn. For the first time, Marcus felt the strange weight of destiny. He did not know what lay ahead, but he understood that everything would change from this moment. Humans were often underestimated across the galaxy. They were small, fragile, and often laughed at by stronger species. But perhaps, just perhaps, the smallest of humans could rise in a way that no one else expected. And so, in the grand hall of the alien palace, Surrounded by thousands of eyes full of shock, doubt, and curiosity, Marcus took a deep breath. He straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, and accepted the choice that would change his life forever. Princess Lyra had chosen him, and that choice would echo across the stars. Marcus could barely believe what had just happened. The entire hall was still silent, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every eye was on him, some filled with doubt, others with curiosity, and a few, like Princess Lyra's, with unwavering certainty. He felt tiny, insignificant, almost as if he were standing on a cliff's edge without a rope. Yet, deep inside, a spark of something new, something he had never felt before, ignited. He had trained hard, yes, but he was the youngest human soldier there. Compared to the towering alien warriors with decades of experience, Marcus felt like a child. His uniform was neat but simple. His sword still bore the marks of practice fights, and his hands sometimes shook when he held a weapon too tightly. He had never faced real danger, never fought for survival outside of training exercises. How could a princess possibly see him as someone worthy of this mission? You mean me? He stammered, his voice cracking. Yes, you. Princess, Lyra said again, her tone calm, gentle, yet filled with authority. I have seen your heart, your courage, even if you do not yet see it yourself. You will come with me. Marcus's heart raced. He wanted to speak, to protest, to explain that he was not ready. But as he looked into Lyra's eyes, he felt something he could not name. It was not fear, nor was it pride. It was trust. She believed in him. And in that moment, he realized that trust was heavier than armor and sharper than any blade. The other humans gawked at him in disbelief. He's just a boy, muttered one of his companions under her breath. The aliens were even less subtle. Captain Zorak, a towering warrior with scars crisscrossing his chest, stepped forward, his voice booming with anger. Princess, he is far too young, too inexperienced. This mission is dangerous. He will fail, and you will regret this. Lyra did not flinch. Her gaze never left Marcus, and her voice remained steady. You will not speak for me, Zorak. My choice is final. He will go, and he will not fail. Not because he is the strongest, but because he is human. Marcus felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Fear clawed at his chest, and doubt whispered cruel words in his ear. You can't do this. You're not strong enough. You'll let everyone down. But alongside the fear, a new feeling rose. Hope, courage, and a determination he had never known. If the princess believed in him, then perhaps he could rise to a challenge far greater than anything he had imagined. For the first time, Marcus understood the weight of being chosen. It was not about medals, victories, or strength. It was about trust. Someone had seen something inside him that no one else had noticed, and suddenly the idea of failing seemed less important than the idea of living up to that trust. He swallowed hard and straightened his shoulders. I will not fail, Hugh, he said, his voice shaking at first but growing steadier with each word. The hall was silent, yet it felt like his declaration had echoed across the entire galaxy. Lyra smiled, a small, proud smile that made Marcus's heart leap. Good, she said softly. We leave at dawn. Prepare yourself. You will learn, you will grow, and together, we will face what no one else can. The other soldiers, both human and alien, were watching. Some shook their heads in disbelief, muttering under their breath about the foolishness of the princess's choice. But others, even the veteran aliens, began to look at Marcus with a flicker of respect. Perhaps this tiny human, so fragile in appearance, might indeed have something extraordinary within him. Marcus returned to his quarters that night, alone with his thoughts. His hands were still trembling, not from fatigue, but from the weight of what had just happened. He replayed the princess's words over and over in his mind. I have seen your heart. You will come with me. Those words burned like a fire inside him, a fire that pushed away doubt and fear, leaving determination in its place. He packed his belongings carefully, ensuring his sword was clean, his uniform neat, and his mind focused. He knew this mission would be unlike anything he had trained for. He knew he would face danger, perhaps even death. But he also knew one thing. He had been chosen. Not because of strength or skill, but because someone had faith in him, and that faith was a weapon more powerful than any sword. As Marcus lay down to rest that night, he thought of the days to come, the training, the battles, the unknown dangers. They no longer frightened him in the same way. A quiet confidence settled over him. He was small, yes, and untested, yes. But he was also chosen. And sometimes that was enough to change everything. When dawn broke, Marcus would step into a galaxy, filled with warriors far stronger and more experienced than he could imagine, but he would not step in fear. He would step in courage, in trust, and in the unshakable knowledge that the princess had seen in him something extraordinary. And with that, Marcus finally slept, the smallest human soldier, carrying the largest hope. The morning sun filtered through the tall alien windows of the palace, painting the hall in shades of gold and orange. Marcus could feel the weight of the day pressing down on him, heavier than any sword or armor. Today, he would officially begin his training with Princess Lyra and the elite squad selected for the dangerous mission. Every soldier's eyes were on him, curious, suspicious, or even mocking. The whispers followed him wherever he went. "He's barely a man." One alien soldier muttered, shaking his head. How can she trust him? Marcus ignored them. He had learned that day one, words could wound, but they could not define you. His hands tightened around the strap of his pack, and he took a slow, steady breath. He could feel the stares of the strongest warriors in the galaxy, their doubt almost palpable, but he forced himself to walk with his head high. Princess Lyra had chosen him. That alone was enough to give him courage. The training grounds were unlike anything Marcus had seen. Towers of rock, floating platforms, and strange alien machines tested the limits of speed, strength, and skill. The veterans moved with grace and power, executing maneuvers that seemed impossible. Marcus's heart sank as he struggled to keep up. His legs burned, his arms ached, and his confidence wavered. For a moment he wondered if he had been wrong, if he really was too small, too inexperienced, too human to belong here. Captain Zorak's deep voice cut through the tension like a blade. "He will fail. I warned you, Princess. He is unworthy." The veteran stepped closer, towering over Marcus. His face was stern, lined with scars from countless battles. Every other soldier seemed to stiffen under the captain's gaze, but Marcus forced himself to meet it head-on. "I may be inexperienced," Marcus said, his voice trembling slightly but firm. "But I will not give up. I will learn. I will fight. And I will prove that your doubts are wrong." Zorak laughed, a low, harsh sound. Bold words for someone who will be crushed the first time real danger strikes. Princess Lyra stepped between them, her eyes flashing like twin stars. "Enough, Captain. He is not only chosen, but he is ready. That is all you need to know." Her hand rested lightly on Marcus's shoulder, a gesture of reassurance. The warmth of her touch steadied him, filling him with a strange, quiet power. Marcus swallowed his fear and nodded. "I understand, Princess. I will not fail." The training began in earnest. The humans and aliens were put through grueling exercises, running across unstable platforms, dodging swings of massive energy blades, and climbing walls that seemed impossible to scale. Marcus fell more times than he could count, scraped his knees, bruised his arms, and still, he got back up. Each failure stung, but every time he rose, he felt a little stronger, a little faster, a little braver. Lyra watched closely, her gaze never leaving him. When others faltered, she offered no handouts, but when Marcus struggled, she offered subtle guidance, a whispered instruction, a small demonstration, a look of encouragement. Her faith in him was unshakable, and slowly Marcus began to feel it in himself. Perhaps he could do this. Perhaps he could rise above the doubts, the sneers, the fear. By midday, the soldiers faced their first simulated battle. Alien beasts, holographic and dangerous, charged at them from all directions. Marcus's instincts took over. He ducked, rolled, and struck with precision. One by one, the beasts fell, and Marcus found himself standing taller, his heart pounding, not with fear but with excitement. Captain Zorak, watching from the sidelines, frowned deeply. But even he could not deny the skill Marcus was beginning to show. Other soldiers whispered among themselves, astonished that the youngest human could keep pace, could strategize, could lead when needed. Finally, the training session ended. Marcus was exhausted, every muscle screaming, but he felt alive in a way he never had before. Lyra approached, her face glowing with pride. "You did well today," she said softly. "You have the courage I saw in you the moment I chose you." Marcus blinked, overwhelmed by her words. "Thank you, Princess. I will do my best." "No," Lyra said, her voice gentle but firm. "You will do more than your best. You will rise. Humans are underestimated across the galaxy. You will show them why." As the soldiers returned to their quarters, whispers followed Marcus, some filled with doubt, others with awe. And though the path ahead was long and dangerous, Marcus felt something he had never felt before: hope. Perhaps he was small, perhaps he was inexperienced, but with Lyra's faith in him, he knew he could stand taller than any warrior, face any challenge, and prove that humans, no matter how young or fragile, could shine brighter than anyone expected. That night Marcus lay awake thinking of the day, the training, and the whispers. He could feel the weight of the coming battles pressing down, but he no longer feared it. Instead, he welcomed it. He had been chosen. And sometimes being chosen was the first step toward greatness. The sun had barely risen when Marcus and the squad assembled outside the palace gates. Today was no longer training. It was their first mission. The alien world of Xandros awaited them, a place scarred by volcanoes and rivers of molten lava, where the air shimmered with heat and danger lurked behind every jagged rock. Even the most experienced soldiers looked uneasy. For Marcus, fear gripped his chest like a heavy stone. Princess Lyra's presence was calming. She walked beside him, her robes flowing, her gaze steady. "Remember," she said softly, "I chose you because I saw courage where others saw weakness. Trust yourself as I trust you." Marcus nodded, swallowing hard. Her words were like a shield around him, guarding him against the rising tide of doubt. He tightened his grip on his sword and took his first steps onto the rocky, uneven terrain. Every footfall echoed in his mind. "You can do this. You must do this." The mission was simple in theory. Navigate through the treacherous cliffs of Xandros, recover an alien artifact, and return safely. Simple. But reality was never simple. Lava rivers flowed unpredictably, and monstrous creatures, part reptile, part insect, prowled the land with sharp claws and glowing eyes. Marcus could hear them in the distance, a low rumble that made the ground vibrate beneath his boots. As they climbed a narrow ridge, a sudden roar split the air. One of the creatures leapt from the shadows, larger than any warrior Marcus had faced in training. Its claws slashed the air and it lunged directly at Princess Lyra. Time seemed to slow. Soldiers froze, unsure what to do. Without thinking, Marcus rushed forward. His instincts took over, every lesson from training flashing in his mind. He threw himself between the princess and the creature, lifting his shield just in time to deflect its claws. Pain shot through his arm as the impact reverberated, up to his shoulder. He stumbled, almost falling into the glowing lava below, but managed to regain his balance. Lyra's eyes widened, not with fear, but with pride. "Good," she whispered, almost inaudibly. Her trust in him burned brighter than the lava rivers around them. Marcus realized then that this was not just a test of strength or skill, it was a test of heart, courage, and determination. The squad rallied around them, but Marcus found himself leading the charge. His young mind worked quickly, anticipating the creature's movements, directing soldiers to safer paths, calling out warnings. Every successful dodge, every strike of his sword filled him with confidence. where fear had threatened to paralyze him. Courage now surged like a river breaking free of a dam. Hours passed and the terrain became even more perilous. Platforms crumbled underfoot. Heat scorched their skin and creatures attacked relentlessly. Marcus fell several times, burned his hands on jagged rocks, and cut himself on the alien flora. Each time, Lyra's steady voice guided him. Each time, he rose stronger. He was no longer just the youngest human. He was becoming a leader, a force the other soldiers could follow. Finally, they reached the location of the artifact. It was encased in a crystalline structure, glowing with an otherworldly light. But retrieving it was not simple. The ground around it cracked, threatening to collapse into molten lava below. Marcus's heart pounded. He could hear Zorak muttering about his youth, about his foolishness, about his likely failure. Ignoring the whispers, Marcus focused. He measured each step carefully, extended his hand and gripped the artifact. The crystal was heavier than it looked, but he held it steady. Behind him, the squad crossed safely, following his lead. Lyra's smile met his eyes, and in that moment, Marcus understood something profound. Courage was contagious. Leadership was not about strength alone. It was about heart. As they made their way back through the dangerous cliffs, Marcus led the group with precision and calm. The creatures were still hunting, but now the soldiers trusted his judgment. They moved like one, coordinated and fearless, following the human they had once doubted. By the time they returned to the palace, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Marcus was exhausted, every muscle aching, but he was triumphant. He had faced real danger for the first time and survived. More importantly, he had earned the respect of soldiers who had doubted him, and he had proven to himself that he could rise to challenges far greater than he had ever imagined. Princess Lyra approached him, placing her hand lightly on his shoulder. "Today you were more than you thought you could be," she said softly. "You have the heart of a warrior, Marcus, not because of skill but because of courage. Never forget that." Marcus looked at her, chest heaving, eyes shining. I will not forget, Princess. And I will continue to grow, for you and for all of us." For the first time, Marcus felt the truth in her choice. Humans might be underestimated across the galaxy, but a human with heart, courage, and determination could shine brighter than the strongest alien warrior. And with that realization, he knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would change him, and the galaxy, forever. Morning after their first mission, Marcus awoke to the quiet hum of the alien palace. His body ached from head to toe, muscles still burning from the grueling climb and the battle with the creatures of Xandros. Yet for the first time in his life, he did not feel weak. He felt alive, stronger, braver, and more certain of himself than he had ever been. The other soldiers were already gathering in the training yard, preparing for a debriefing exercise. Marcus followed Princess Lyra, walking beside her as she moved with her usual grace and authority. Her presence was a constant reminder that he had been chosen, not for his size, his experience, or his past, but for the courage she had seen inside him. Captain Zorak was waiting, arms crossed, his scowl deeper than ever. "Today, we continue. The training, the human boy," he said, glaring at Marcus, "will again be tested, and perhaps today he will finally learn his place." Marcus felt a familiar surge of nerves. The words stung, but they no longer held power over him. He straightened his shoulders and met Zorak's gaze. "I will do my best," he said simply. Lyra's eyes softened. "You have done more than your best, Marcus. You will continue to rise as all humans must." The squad was tasked with a complex strategy exercise. Alien soldiers and humans had to work together to capture a simulated enemy base while navigating treacherous terrain. The challenge was designed to test coordination, leadership, and courage under pressure. Many of the alien soldiers were seasoned veterans, confident in their abilities and suspicious of humans. They had watched Marcus with doubt, some even smirking at the youngest member of the team. But when the exercise began, Marcus's instincts took over. He observed the terrain carefully, noticed patterns in the movements of both allies and enemies, and called out precise directions. At first, some soldiers hesitated, unsure of whether to follow a human so young. But slowly, they realized he was right. Every suggestion he made improved their position. Every action he took saved time, and every word he spoke gave confidence to those around him. Even Captain Zorak, who had been so certain Marcus would fail, began to notice. The scowl on his face softened just slightly as Marcus led the squad across unstable platforms, through mock lava fields, and around dangerous traps. Marcus did not boast, he did not demand attention, he simply acted with courage and clarity, and the results spoke for themselves. By midday, the squad reached the simulated enemy base. The task seemed impossible at first, but Marcus guided each soldier into position. The aliens who had once doubted him now followed his lead without hesitation. With a combination of careful planning, quick thinking, and a courage that seemed to shine brighter with each passing moment, Marcus directed the capture. Victory was theirs, complete and undeniable. As they returned to the palace, exhausted but triumphant, whispers filled the air. Soldiers who had mocked him now looked at him with respect. Others, inspired by his courage, began to understand that humans, small, young, and underestimated, could rise above expectations when given trust and purpose. Princess Lyra walked beside Marcus, her expression proud. "Today, you have not only proven yourself to them," she said softly. "You have proven it to yourself. Humans are underestimated across the galaxy, but you have shown them that heart and courage matter more than size or experience." Marcus felt warmth bloom in his chest. For so long he had wondered if he truly belonged among these warriors, if he could ever be more than the smallest, youngest human in the galaxy. But now, after facing real challenges, guiding soldiers through danger and earning their respect, he understood something powerful. Being small did not mean being weak. Being human did not mean being powerless. And trust, faith from someone, like Lyra, could ignite strength greater than any armor or weapon. Captain Zorak approached him, his towering form intimidating even after the exercise. Marcus braced himself, but instead of anger, Zorak's deep voice held a hint of respect. "You are braver than I thought. Perhaps the princess saw something in you I could not." Marcus nodded, a small smile forming on his lips. He had no words to respond, only a feeling of triumph mixed with humility. He knew this was just the beginning. Many dangers still awaited them, and many lessons remained to be learned. But for the first time, he felt truly capable, truly strong, and truly human. That night, Marcus sat in his quarters reflecting on the day. The aches in his muscles reminded him of the trials he had faced, but they also reminded him of how far he had come. He thought of the squad now trusting him and of Princess Lyra, who had seen potential where others saw weakness. And deep down, Marcus knew something extraordinary. Humans may be small, underestimated, and inexperienced, but a human with courage, heart, and determination could rise higher than anyone could imagine. He smiled to himself, feeling a new fire burning within. The galaxy had underestimated him, yes, but he would prove them wrong. He would rise. And with Princess Lyra's trust guiding him, there was nothing he could not face. The alien sky over Xandros was dark and heavy, clouds swirling with a strange, green light that reflected off rivers of molten lava below. Marcus stood at the edge of a massive chasm, the ground trembling beneath his boots. This was no training, no simulated exercise. This was the real test, the mission for which he had been chosen, a mission that could decide the fate of the Alliance. Princess Lyra was at his side, her presence calm, almost otherworldly. "This is it," she said softly, her voice carrying across the wind. "Trust yourself, Marcus. I trust you." Marcus swallowed hard, his hands gripping his sword tightly. His heart pounded in his chest and fear tried to creep in, but he pushed it away. This was what he had trained for, what he had been chosen for. Every step, every lesson, every failure had led to this moment. The squad behind them was tense. Soldiers from different worlds waiting for his signal. Captain Zorak's eyes, once filled with doubt, now reflected cautious respect. They were looking to Marcus, not just for orders, but for courage, for a guide across the impossible. The challenge was clear. Cross the chasm, 100 meters of crumbling rock and glowing lava below, reach the artifact at the far side and return safely. The slightest mistake could send them plummeting into the molten rivers. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped forward. He moved carefully, testing the first stones with his foot, feeling the weight and stability beneath him. One by one, he led the squad across, calling out warnings and directions. Every step required focus, courage, and trust, in himself, in his team, and in Princess Lyra. Halfway across, disaster struck. A section of rock cracked violently, sending a massive plume of dust into the air. One of the alien soldiers, a tall veteran, slipped and screamed as he nearly fell. Marcus dove without hesitation, grabbing the soldier's arm and pulling him to safety. Pain shot through his body from the sudden strain, but he gritted his teeth and held on. "You are braver than anyone I have met," Lyra whispered, her hand briefly brushing his shoulder. Her eyes glowed with pride. Marcus felt warmth spread through him, steadying his nerves. Fear still lingered, but it was no longer paralyzing. It had been replaced by determination, the kind that could move mountains or cross chasms of molten lava. As they neared the artifact, more creatures appeared. Massive, glowing beasts, hungry and aggressive. The squad faltered, unsure of how to defend themselves while keeping balance on the fragile rocks. Marcus's mind raced. He shouted orders, directed soldiers to cover each other, and took the lead in fighting the creatures while keeping the path clear. Every swing of his sword, every call of direction was precise and calculated. His body screamed from exhaustion, but he moved with a rhythm that surprised even himself. The smallest human, chosen by the princess, was now the anchor for an entire squad of the galaxy's finest warriors. Finally, they reached the artifact, encased in a crystalline structure that pulsed with energy. Marcus approached carefully, sensing the instability around them. He lifted it steadily, holding it above the lava, and gave the signal to the squad to retreat. The journey back was equally perilous. Rocks crumbled, creatures lunged, and the ground trembled as though the planet itself wanted to swallow them. Yet Marcus moved with confidence and clarity, guiding every step, ensuring that no one fell, no one was left behind. When they finally returned to solid ground, sweat, blood, and exhaustion coating their bodies, silence filled the area. The squad, once doubtful and wary, now looked at Marcus with awe and respect. Even Captain Zorak, imposing and stern, could not hide the admiration in his eyes. Princess Lyra approached Marcus, her expression radiant. "You have done more than survive," she said, her voice gentle but filled with pride. "You have led, protected, and inspired. You have proven that courage is greater than size, that heart is stronger than experience.